7 signs your dark and light powers have been merged, extremely rare. There's a moment on the spiritual path that very few ever reach. It's not written about in mainstream books, and you won't find it in the polished stories of enlighteningly spiritual teachers. It's something raw, secret, ancient. It's the fusion of 2 primal forces inside your being, your darkness and your light, into something entirely new. If you're even close to this, you're not just on a spiritual journey anymore. You've become the journey itself. You've stopped playing the game of good versus evil, right versus wrong, and started to realize that the real transformation happens when you face both your shadows and your divinity, and you stop running from either. That's where the alchemy begins. That's where the rare ones emerge, the ones who have merged their dark and light powers. And if you're watching this, maybe you're one of them, or maybe you're about to become one. Let me tell you something very few people understand. The universe is not trying to make you pure. It's trying to make you whole. And wholeness is messy, it's contradictory, it's uncomfortable. But it's also the only path to true power. Have you ever wondered why you feel torn, almost like 2 different beings live inside you? One wants to forgive, love, heal. The other wants to rage, destroy, reclaim. This duality isn't a mistake, it's the evidence of your potential. Most people suppress one side. They choose to be good and bury their darkness, or they surrender to their trauma and abandon the light. But you're different. You've started to notice that both voices are speaking truths, even when they contradict each other. And now, the real work begins.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The first sign that your dark and light powers have begun to merge is that your morality starts to dissolve. Not in a chaotic, reckless way, but in a liberating one. You no longer see the world in black and white. Right and wrong become less important than truth and authenticity. You stop asking, "Am I being good?" and start asking, "Am I being real?" You begin to understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. That protecting your peace might look like rejection. That setting boundaries might feel like war. And yet, it's still divine. When your light and dark merge, you no longer fear your anger, you understand its message. You no longer suppress your desire, you channel it. You realize you can be fierce and kind, ruthless and compassionate. You become a paradox, and that's your power. The second sign is that your energy becomes intense, almost too intense for normal situations. People around you start feeling triggered, fascinated, or both. You walk into a room and the energy shifts, not because you're trying to be noticed, but because your frequency is no longer diluted. You're no longer hiding parts of yourself. When your light and dark merge, your aura becomes magnetic. You're not pretending to be peaceful, you are peace, even when you're being bold. You're not pretending to be humble, you carry your power in silence, without apology. And this energy either awakens people or repels them. There's no in-between. That's how you know something real is happening. The third sign is that your healing becomes non-linear. You stop expecting to be done healing. You realize healing isn't a straight road, it's a spiral. You revisit old wounds, but now with new eyes. Instead of hating your pain, you begin to respect it. You stop chasing perfection and start embracing process. You allow yourself to feel grief, rage, joy, and love all in the same breath. You stop judging yourself for breaking down. When your dark and light powers merge, your healing becomes less about fixing and more about integrating. You embrace the parts of you that were once shameful or hidden, and they begin to transform not by force, but by being seen. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you let yourself feel your full range without editing it for others? When was the last time you let yourself be both holy and human, sacred and messy, all at once? Because if you've started doing that, even a little, It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of initiation. You're stepping into territory most people aren't brave enough to walk. And yes, it's going to cost you. You'll lose people. You'll outgrow old roles. You'll scare those who only know how to love the version of you that played small. But what you gain is everything. The fourth sign is that your intuition becomes a storm, not a whisper, not a gentle nudge, a storm. You begin to hear the voice of your soul so clearly that it becomes impossible to ignore. You'll wake up in the middle of the night with downloads. You'll feel people's energy before they speak. You'll know when someone is lying, even if their words are perfect. This isn't just spiritual sensitivity, it's the raw power of both your light and your shadow working together. The shadow perceives danger, manipulation, hidden motives. The light perceives truth, healing, divine timing. When they merge, your intuition becomes surgical. You stop asking for signs, you become the sign. You don't need external validation, you just know. And that knowing changes everything. But here's the thing no one tells you. This level of awakening is lonely. Not because you're unloved, but because very few can meet you at that depth. You'll find yourself pulling away from shallow conversations, empty routines, surface-level relationships. You won't be able to tolerate lies, especially the ones you used to tell yourself. You'll crave solitude, not as an escape, but as a sanctuary. Because when your light and dark merge, your soul becomes louder than the world, and you'll need silence to hear it fully. So if you've been feeling like you're breaking apart and coming together all at once, if you've been cycling between rage and peace, fire and stillness, chaos and clarity, if you're starting to feel like you no longer fit into any one category, label, or box, congratulations, you're not lost. You're evolving. You're not broken. You're becoming whole. You're not confused. You're merging into mastery. And that's just the beginning. The warrior saint, how power and purity become one in you. There's a rare moment in your spiritual evolution when something clicks so silently, so subtly, that you almost miss it. It's not a thunderclap. It's not fireworks. It's a stillness that descends like the eye of a storm. You realize you are no longer fighting against yourself. The war between your light and your darkness doesn't rage as it once did. Instead, they begin to bow to each other. The angel and the beast within you shake hands. You are no longer a battlefield. You've become something far greater, a sovereign field where power and purity coexist. This is the emergence of the warrior saint. You see, most people separate these two forces. They believe power corrupts and purity is weak, so they choose to either be feared or to be loved. They chase dominance or they chase peace. But when your dark and light powers merge, you begin to channel a third force, divine authority. This is not the power that controls others. This is the power that controls yourself. It's not the false purity that avoids confrontation, but the fierce clarity that knows when to strike and when to surrender. You become both sword and sanctuary. You speak truth not to hurt, but to heal. And you're not afraid to be misunderstood, because your alignment is not based on approval, it's based on soul integrity. Have you felt that shift? That strange moment when you're about to explode in anger, and instead of suppressing it, you hold it not with shame but with command. You feel the fire, but you don't let it burn blindly. You aim it, you channel it. You use it to protect your peace, not destroy your world. That's not repression. That's mastery. And that's what happens when power and purity become one. You're no longer reacting, you're responding from alignment. You don't chase justice, you embody it. You don't seek revenge, you radiate consequences. This embodiment is the fifth sign your dark and light powers have merged. You become unshakable, not numb, not invincible, but rooted, grounded in a deeper knowing that no external chaos can reach. You stop flinching at the opinions of others. You stop explaining your evolution to people who are still committed to misunderstanding you. You stop negotiating your value. Why? Because you've seen what you're capable of when your shadow is untamed. And now that it's integrated, you carry it with reverence. And here's something powerful: your pain starts to become your message, not in a performative way, not in a look at my scars kind of way, but in a sacred, embodied wisdom that radiates without effort. You walk into a room and people feel safe not because you're soft, but because they can sense you've been through hell and came back clean. That kind of presence is rare. It's magnetic, and it's not something you can fake. It only comes from having danced with your demons and kissed your angels and realized that both were initiators. But the sixth sign is even more rare. You begin to see others clearly, not through judgment, not through projections, but through soul recognition. You can look at someone and feel their wounds before they speak. You can hear the truth beneath their words. You realize that everyone is carrying both light and dark, and most are terrified of both. And because you've made peace with your own duality, you stop needing to fix or save anybody. You just hold space. You become a mirror that reflects not who they pretend to be, but who they really are. And that, my friend, is sacred. That's divine service. And yet, this path isn't glamorous. It's not always peaceful. It's not about being liked. The warrior saint walks alone more often than not because they are unloved, but because their presence is too real for those still clinging to illusions. And that's okay. Because by now you've stopped needing company for validation. You've stopped fearing solitude. You've realized that your light shines brightest when it's anchored in your shadow. That your purpose becomes clearest when your ego finally bows to your soul. So let me ask you, what would happen if you stopped trying to be just one thing? What if you stopped trying to be good or powerful or enlightened and instead just became whole? What if your divinity isn't in your perfection, but in your willingness to hold all of who you are with love and discipline? You're not here to choose between the sword and the prayer. You're here to be both. You're not here to suppress your shadow or dilute your light. You're here to merge them, to become the kind of presence that doesn't just talk about healing but is healing. Not because you're flawless, but because you're fused. The mirror of God, why the universe now uses you as a living portal. There's a threshold that, once crossed, changes everything, not because your life suddenly becomes easier, but because your presence begins to carry meaning far beyond your personal story. It's when your light and dark powers have merged so completely that you no longer live just for yourself. You become a mirror of God, a living portal through which the universe speaks, heals, and awakens others. It's not something you announce. It's not something you even try to be. It just is. You walk into a room and people feel something shift. You say a sentence and someone breaks down in tears, not because you planned it, but because your energy now vibrates at the frequency of truth, real truth. Not the kind that flatters the ego, but the kind that cuts through illusion like a blade made of silence. You start to notice that people come to you for reasons they can't explain. Strangers open up to you in public. Friends confess things they've never told anyone. You hear, "I don't know why I'm telling you this," more times than you can count. And it's not because you're just a good listener. It's because your soul has become readable. You've become transparent to the divine. You don't carry the same mask others do, and so they feel safe dropping theirs around you. That's what happens when your inner duality dissolves. You stop transmitting confusion. Your clarity becomes a field that others unconsciously feel. And not everyone will like it. Some will run, others will project. But the ones who are ready, they'll be changed. This is the seventh and final sign that your dark and light powers have merged. You become a spiritual catalyst. You don't need titles. You don't need rituals. You don't need to perform. Your being becomes the message. Not because you're perfect, but because you're authentic. You've faced your own chaos, and now you can hold space for the chaos of others without flinching. You've tasted the void, And now your silence becomes medicine. You've walked through fire without burning others, and now your words carry weight. The universe begins to use you not in a way that drains, but in a way that channels. You become a vessel, a tuning fork for divine intelligence, a walking paradox who embodies the impossible, unwavering presence and unrelenting motion, stillness and fire, depth and simplicity. And yet, this level of embodiment doesn't make you feel superior. It humbles you deeply. Because the more you merge with your full self, the more you realize how little of you is needed for the divine to work through you. You become less concerned with being impressive and more committed to being available. Available to truth. Available to love. Available to correction. Available to growth. You stop performing and start transmitting. And that's why people feel so much in your presence they're not feeling you. They're feeling what's flowing through you. But here's the secret no one tells you. Being a mirror of God is not a reward. It's a responsibility. You will be tested even more. Not by obvious failures, but by subtle seductions. Praise will come. Invitations will come. Influence will grow. And you'll be tempted to make it about you. That's the final trap. The ego will want to claim the light. But if you've truly merged with your shadow, you'll recognize that impulse for what it is, an echo of the old self, trying to return. And you'll smile. Not because you've defeated your ego, but because you've finally made peace with it. You don't need to kill it, you've integrated it. And now it serves your soul rather than sabotaging it. So what does life look like when you become a living portal? It's not glamorous. It's not always peaceful, but it's real. You wake up and feel your purpose in every breath. You walk through pain and no longer fear it. You love without attachment. You speak without agenda. You create not to be seen, but to reveal the unseen. And the deeper you go, the more you realize something astonishing. You are not the source. You never were. You are the space through which the source reveals itself. That's the miracle. That's the mystery. Let me ask you something. What if your highest calling isn't to build a name, a brand, or a legacy, but to become so empty, so whole, so available, that the universe can speak through you without distortion? What if your greatest work is not what you do, but who you are when no one is watching? What if the way you walk, the way you breathe, the way you listen is the real transmission? You are not here just to awaken. You are here to awaken others by your very existence, not through force, not through preaching, but through undistorted presence. You are the mirror now, and in your reflection, others will see what they've been afraid to face and what they've always longed to become. The return to origin, living as the embodied truth in a sleeping world. There comes a point on this rare path after the merging, after the fire, after the silence, when you realize you're not who you used to be, not even close. You've returned to something older than your name, deeper than your wounds, and more real than your thoughts. It's not a version of you. It's your origin. Who you were before you were taught to be anything. And yet you're still here in this modern, noisy, distracted world, fully awake, fully embodied. And now the question becomes, how do you live in a world that's still asleep? This is perhaps the most sacred and most painful phase of the spiritual journey. Not the awakening itself, but the return. Because now you realize you're not here to escape the world, you're here to walk through it as truth itself. And truth, when embodied, is not always welcomed. It's often met with resistance, denial, projection. You'll touch people in ways they don't understand. You'll trigger things they're not ready to face. You'll shine light into rooms that were never meant to be lit. And sometimes it will hurt. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your presence itself is disruptive to illusions. You are no longer just a person, you are a living contradiction to the lie that people have made peace with. But still you stay. You don't run. You don't detach. You don't ascend away from the world. because you've realized that real mastery isn't about escaping reality. It's about transforming it through your embodiment. You understand now that enlightenment isn't a destination, it's a frequency, a way of walking, a way of choosing, a way of being, and you carry it like breath, quiet, constant, effortless. You don't preach it, you are it. You've become the still point in the spinning world, the calm in someone's storm, the reminder that peace is not found in isolation but in integration. And yet you're not perfect. That's the beauty of it. You still bleed, you still feel, you still falter. But now you do so with awareness. You fall consciously, you rise consciously. You are not trying to avoid life anymore, you are inhabiting it fully. You cry, but your tears are sacred. You laugh, but it's not to escape, it's to celebrate. You are not here to be above the world. You are here to be deeply inside it, while no longer of it. You begin to notice how time moves differently around you. Synchronicities become normal. Your presence bends timelines. Healing accelerates in your company. People change after meeting you, and they don't always know why. You are carrying a frequency that reminds them of who they are beneath the noise. And even if they forget you, they never forget how they felt around you. That's the essence of the origin. It's not a personality. It's a state, a vibration, a return to truth so pure, so distilled, that it no longer needs to be explained. And here's the final teaching: you stop needing to be seen. You no longer crave confirmation. You don't need to go viral, be understood, or prove your worth, because you've seen the face of God in your darkness and your light, and you've realized you are it, not in arrogance, not in separation, but in the deepest humility. You see it in others too, even when they can't. You love them anyway. You hold the vision for them until they can hold it for themselves. So let me ask you, can you walk as the embodied truth, even when no one applauds you? Can you stay rooted in your origin, even when the world tries to pull you back into roles you've outgrown? Can you be the one who remembers, not with words, but with your being? Because if you can, then you've completed the rarest journey, not from darkness to light, but from fragmentation to wholeness. And now you don't just talk about the divine, you are its living echo in a world that's forgotten the sound. This isn't the end, it's the return to origin. The return to you.